There have been several times where I have criticized our pursuit of utopia, and I have been asked the question that okay, I get it. Perfection is impossible, utopia is impossible, but that doesn't mean we should not chase it, or that doesn't mean we should not dream and hope that it is and work towards it. And my answer to that has always been yeah, you should. You should hope that there exists a world where everything is perfect and where everyone is happy. But you shouldn't pursue it because, again, there is a difference between pursuing what is right and what is utopia. Because a utopia is not really a utopia. It is more of what we acknowledge as dystopia in some sense. And before I present my arguments, I would like to read what Dostoevsky wrote in Notes from Underground regarding the pursuit of utopia, and even the possibility. He described a scenario where we might even achieve utopia, and what would be our reactions as human species to that achievement. So here's the passage. Okay, this is from Notes from Underground by Dostoevsky again. Now I ask you, what can be expected of man since he is being endowed with strange qualities? Shower upon him every earthly blessing, drown him in the sea of happiness so that nothing but bubbles of bliss can be seen on the surface, give him economic prosperity such that he should have nothing else to do but sleep, eat cakes, and busy himself with the continuation of his species. And even then, out of sheer ingratitude, sheer spite, man would play you some nasty trick. He would even risk his cakes and would deliberately desire the most fatal rubbish, the most uneconomical absurdity, simply to introduce into all this positive good sense his fatal fantastic element. It is just his fantastic dreams, his vulgar folly that he will desire to retain, simply in order to prove to himself as though that were so necessary that men still are men and not the keys of a piano, which the laws of the nature threaten to control completely, that soon one will be able to desire nothing but by the calendar. This is a very powerful passage, and it describes what will happen even if we do achieve a utopia. And that's crazy, right? Like you wouldn't imagine a man doing such activities, and that's exactly the attitude of most economists around the world. We don't try to achieve utopia. I mean, they don't try to achieve utopia. They try to optimize the resources we already do have. And believe me, that's a much more difficult thing to do. To make the best out of what you have and to retain that as a powerful scepter of your skills is much harder to work towards perfection you know you're not going to achieve. And again, freedom is very dear to man. I mean, to all humans. Uh, we want the sense of freedom over eternal bliss. We want the sense of freedom over embellishment from all pain. We want the sense of freedom over uh, escapism from all kinds of suffering, and we'll do anything to retain it. As Dostoevsky said, that we'll deliberately desire the most fatal rubbish, the most uneconomical absurdity. And that's true. That's what we have seen happen when many policies have gotten introduced along all countries in pursuit of a perfection. And a slightly good example of that may be the promise of communism. When communism came around, it promised a universal redemption to people. It promised a world where everybody would have everything and equally, and there would be no conflicts, there would be no fights over property. But just to exhibit their own freedom and superiority, people completely achieved the opposite of what they were meant to. And maybe they were never meant to do that. Because communism promised perfection, communism promised utopia. And that's one of my leading arguments when I talk about why capitalism is important. Because capitalism, at its core, doesn't grant the promise of everyone being happy all the time and everyone having money, but rather it grants the freedom to work your way up. And I know there are flaws in these systems, and there are meant to be flaws in these systems, but when you're chasing perfections, all your uh, all your policies and all your strategic plans towards achieving that goal will be directed towards something that doesn't even exist. Whereas if you chase optimal development, your policies, your plans, and your goals and your short-term milestones will be directed towards something that's much more palpably understood and much more achievable in some sense. And even then, it's quite difficult to do so. So again, it's uh, it's not about um, the hope a utopia grants people, because I realize the importance of hope. I mean, that's what and comets pass away is all about. Hope. You should hope that there might be a world somewhere, sometime, where everything is perfect. But that hope shouldn't intervene with your already conceived plans regarding working with what you already do have and trying to achieve part of that perfection from that. So that is my analogy, and that is my analysis of why we shouldn't idealize utopia as much, why we shouldn't work towards it, but why we should keep hoping that it might happen someday.